Let's see if there is a significant difference between the 4K gaming experience using the RTX 4070 versus the 4070 Super. I've paired these graphics cards with the Ryzen 5 7600X CPU as I think this is the perfect combo. By the way, you don't need an expensive monitor to experience 4K. This is MSI G321CU 4K 144Hz monitor. Usually it can be had for around $400. In terms of power consumption, the RTX 4070 Super normally consumes around 200 watts. In contrast, the RTX 4070 consumes just below 200 watts of power, so there is no huge difference in terms of power consumption between the two graphics cards. I would even go as far as calling it a tie. We are going to test two most graphically demanding games that are available right now. Those are Hellblade 2 and Alan Wake 2. Starting with the RTX 4070 Super. To have a pleasant 60 FPS experience at 4K resolution with the 4070 Super, you have several options in terms of graphics. The one I prefer is graphics quality maxed out, that's high graphics preset, DLSS super resolution set to quality, and frame generation enabled. That way, in normal scenarios like this one here, we are getting well above 60 FPS. And take a look at this scenery. A lot of vegetation and some ray-traced lighting. In some scenes we are even getting above 70 FPS, which is nice. Here's another scene, and once again we are getting well above 70 FPS. The image quality with DLSS and frame generation enabled is good. I have no complaints. And latency is fine as well. And this right here is the worst case scenario. 50 plus FPS using these settings. The image still looks quite fluid, so it's fine, because there won't be many of these scenes in the game where you'll be experiencing this kind of performance. You can also enjoy the game without frame generation, but then you will have to reduce the graphics quality to medium, and you can keep resolution upscaling on quality. And in the worst case scenarios, you will still get above 50 FPS. In other scenes, the FPS will stay close to 60 or higher. The game still looks gorgeous using medium graphics quality preset. If you want to keep that graphics quality on high, but still don't want to use frame generation, then you can lower resolution upscaling down to performance. This way you can still have a great experience, which is very close to 60 FPS in most scenes. However, there may be dips to around 56-55 FPS from time to time, even in the less demanding scenes like this one here. In other scenes, you can still count on performance to stay at well above 60 FPS. Right now we're getting 70 plus, 69, very nice. However, in worst case scenarios, your FPS will drop below 50, and yeah, it is still fine, but it's not pleasant, I'll tell you that. Personally, I would use the first set of settings that I've demonstrated. That was high graphics preset, DLSS set to quality, and frame generation enabled. But this experience is still acceptable in my opinion. And this is Alan Wake 2. I'm curious, can we use ray tracing in this game on a 4K monitor using the 4070 Super? Let's find out. I've selected high graphics preset and medium ray tracing preset. But I'm pretty sure that we have to use frame generation as well as DLSS set to performance to make it work. And indeed, even with these settings, the performance is still not great in the worst case scenario here in the forest. We're getting hella high latency, and I can actually feel it when I move my mouse. it feels a little bit jelly, so that's not nice. But I can still accept it because this is the worst case scenario. We won't be spending all of our gameplay in this forest, so I don't know. Maybe it is acceptable. Let's move to another location to find out. We are now in the town area, and here the performance is actually not bad at all. Above 60 FPS. We can see those high quality reflections without any noise. That window right there was reflecting this ferry tickets office. Check it out. Yeah, that adds some realism to the game, which is quite important, I feel, in this kind of game. The better the immersion, the better the experience will be. And in this location, controls feel fine, although we're still getting above 90 milliseconds average PC latency, which is not ideal, but I feel fine controlling the game like this, unlike the experience we've had in the forest, where I didn't like how the controls felt at all. However, if you want your experience to be as smooth as possible, then ray tracing is not an option. You have to turn it off. We can keep graphics quality on high preset, and let's set higher DLSS quality. That's 1440p upscaled to 4K, and frame generation is still enabled. Frame generation feels and looks good in this game, so I don't see a reason not to use it. And take a look at this. In the town area, we're getting well above 70 FPS. Very nice, very fluid. And even if we go into the forest, FPS still stays close to 60 and controls feel okay. Not perfect, but okay. I am satisfied with this performance and with this experience in general. If you don't want to use frame generation, then you will have to lower DLSS quality to performance. This way, you can keep FPS at around 60 in most areas of the forest. However, let's check out one of the worst offenders in the game. This is one of the most demanding scenes, and the FPS still stays above 50. The image is nice and fluid. This is enjoyable experience right here. But you can kind of still get away with using DLSS balanced. If you don't mind that your FPS will drop below 50 in the most demanding scenes, it still feels fine. I wouldn't mind playing the game like this and having better image quality, because DLSS performance is kind of not perfect. DLSS balanced looks very good on a 4K screen in comparison to it. And in more common gaming scenes, DLSS set to balanced will deliver well above 60 FPS. I think that this is the way to go. What I would do is use DLSS balanced, and when I encounter a graphically demanding area in the game, then just switch on frame generation, and that will give you that extra FPS to make the game feel smooth. Have a look at this. We are back in the same scene, and the FPS is above 60, and the game looks great. The image is nice and crisp. Now let's see what kind of experience we can get using the RTX 4070. The first thing I want to check is ray tracing performance. Is it going to be possible to get a playable experience with the RTX 4070, the same as we did with the 4070 Super? Let's find out. Ray tracing is on medium, graphics quality on high, frame generation enabled, and DLSS is set to performance. And so far, not too bad. And over here, the FPS drops below 40. Yeah, unfortunately it is worse. It is not miles worse, but It's getting close to the point where I would say I don't want to play this game like this. And in other areas, sometimes we get dips below 60. So that just shows you that while the 4070 Super had a pretty consistent above 60 FPS experience in this area right here, on the 4070, not quite. So it's lacking just a little bit of that performance to make this experience pleasant. But because the price difference is just $50 between the two graphics cards, I would still go for the 4070 Super for the smoother ray tracing experience. Now let's disable ray tracing and check if the 4070 delivers good experience without it. Graphics quality will stay on high, frame generation enabled, and I've set DLSS to balanced. And in the worst case scenario, the FPS stays above 50, controls latency is fine, not perfect, but acceptable. But let's see what kind of performance we'll get without frame generation. And DLSS balanced is not cutting it. In this particular scene, 40 plus FPS. I definitely want to see more FPS, so let's use DLSS performance. And this is better. However, we're still below 50 FPS in the worst case scenario. But I think this is acceptable. I wouldn't mind playing this game like so. Because in other, less graphically demanding areas in the game, the FPS stays well above 60, close to 70 and sometimes reaching 80, and the image looks fine. Basically, the difference between the 4070 and the 4070 Super in a game like this one is that you will have to use DLSS performance on the 4070, while on the 4070 Super you can bump it up to DLSS balanced. And honestly, you would have to put them side by side to actually notice the difference in image quality, because this is fine. This experience is pleasant enough for me to just enjoy the game. The only difference I can notice between DLSS performance and balanced is when I look at some thin objects like wires. On balanced, there is a little bit less shimmering in those kind of textures. However, I cannot call this difference significant. It is fine. You can still have a pleasant experience at 4K in this game using the RTX 4070. Will that be the case in Hellblade 2 using my favorite settings? That is, graphics quality on high, DLSS set to quality and frame generation enabled. In normal areas, we are getting close to 60 FPS. We do get dips below 60 more often than with the 4070 Super. In other common scenes, you can expect above 60 FPS. And if we enter the worst case scenario area, yep, we're getting dips below 50, 46, 47. So it's not catastrophic, but it's right on the edge of unpleasant. Let's see how much it will improve if we use DLSS set to balanced. And so far so good. If we are experiencing above 50 FPS in the worst case scenario, like this one here, I can tell you now that the rest of the game will be absolutely beautiful and smooth. So once again, the only difference between the 4070 and the 4070 Super experience is that you have to use DLSS quality setting that is one level lower. But what if we don't want to use frame generation? Let's see if we can get good experience with DLSS set to performance, frame generation disabled, and graphics preset set to high. And yeah, this is not perfect. 40 FPS. We definitely had a better experience with the 4070 Super with these settings. If I wanted to play this game without frame generation on the 4070, then I would use DLSS set to balanced and just lower graphics quality to medium. Medium and high look very similar in this game. That way you can have a beautiful 60 plus FPS experience in most scenes in the game, like this one here. Looks beautiful. And in worst case scenarios, you'll still get above 50 FPS, which is what we want. This is a slow-paced game, so having 50 plus FPS is absolutely fine. In conclusion, I would definitely spend that extra $50 on the 4070 Super, because it gives you smoother ray tracing performance and it gives you more flexibility in terms of graphics settings that you can use. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. And if you are interested in any of the products featured in this video, you can find them on Amazon at the links in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to reward it with a like, and subscribe for more if you haven't already. It was I, Vadim. Until next time.